Everyone is talking about this AI bubble that exists. The bubble's going to pop. It's the doomsday. Everybody's going to lose all their money. Let me tell you about the real bubble that you need to be concerned with. Okay. In fact, it's not even a bubble. It's a giant $1 trillion sleeping balloon right in front of your face, and you don't know about it. Private equity. Okay. Listen, today we are going to focus exclusively on the actual bubble that I think is a problem for investors everywhere, even if you're not an accredited investor or qualified purchaser, qualified investor for PE firms. Okay. So it's important to dive into this because PE is getting out of control. Okay. PE investors, PE firms, private equity firms, they are getting into blue collar spaces, especially the last 3 years. Okay. Ever since COVID, I'm not sure I'm allowed to even spell it, but ever since then, right, 2020, even before then, even 2019, whenever the Fed funds rate was like 1.75, borrowing was extremely low cost. PE firms exist because they take on debt. Now, I'm going to explain all this, but all you really need to know before we even listen to this is go do your own research on private equity firms. It is a $6 trillion industry that is going to pop. All right. And it's going to leave a lot of people holding the bags. So first term of the day, it is going to be accredited investor and qualified investor. This is an important term. And I want you guys to remember this because it's a goal, right? There are certain investments, PEs being one of them, that you have to have a certain amount of net worth or cash flow to be able to basically say, hey, like I'm somebody, I know the risks that I'm taking. These are the requirements that I've met to be able to invest in your PE firm. So to be a accredited investor, you have to have $200,000 as an individual, $300,000 as a married couple in income for the last 2 years. And then you also have to have, or maybe it's and I think. And you have to, no, actually I do think it's or. Sorry guys, this is so long ago, my brain is a little fried from all the information I've had over the last 10 years, but you have to have $1 million net worth, not including your house. Okay, so that's an accredited investor. Pretty much anybody who has that qualification can invest in like a really small private equity firm. Now, if you want to do a huge one, right, like Blackstone, Apollo, KKR, those are some pretty big PE funds. You have to be a qualified investor, and that is you have to have $5 million in investable assets as an individual, or as an entity, think trust, endowment, pension fund. You have to have $25 million. So it's quite a next step up to be qualified to even invest in these PE firms, right? And the point of that being, not everybody can do it, is because it's not good. It's an extremely risky bet on someone else investing your money into companies you probably don't know about. So there's a few really big, important parts of PE firms and how they do their management that gives me the ick, right? I don't even like using that word, but it's a great description of what PE firms do, private equity does behind the curtains. And the way it differs from owning a stock on the NASDAQ or just the secondary market, New York Stock Exchange, and anywhere where you're purchasing a stock, actually owning a public company, there are requirements, right? And the first really big thing I want you to know is PE firms do not have to disclose anything to you, okay? They can to the people actually investing in the firms, and maybe they'll do something once or twice a year where they give out like an earnings report, but there's no audit of them. There's no accountability that is held. They're not held to a higher standard, right? At least with public companies, the information you get is audited. Okay. It is expected to be accurate, and then it is verified to be accurate. Okay. So what exactly is a PE firm? What does that even mean? So like I said, we have Blackstone, Apollo, KKR, Goldman Sachs, there's private equity there. There's private equity all over the place. Pretty much every big bank you've heard of has a private equity arm. And they're extremely, extremely lucrative for people like me and the other people managing them, right? Like I can have a private equity firm. I could open my own if I wanted to, right? I don't want to because I don't like the way they do business. All right. And I'm going to quickly explain why. And really just real quick how PE firms work in general. So private equity firm, they effectively say, hey, I'm going to start a fund and I have to get investor money. So they'll go around and they'll lobby to have investors come and say, hey, we'll give you $10 million and in 10 years, we'll give you back your money with a multiple return, right? They can't make guarantees, but the goal is to try and make that grow as much as physically possible. So let's say they do that with 10 people, they get $100 million. So now this PE firm has $100 million. What are they going to do with it? Well, they're going to go talk to business owners. And the three biggest areas, I took these notes real quick. Let me look at where the three biggest ones are. That private equity targets is technology, obviously, small startups, software companies, healthcare companies, infrastructure, digital infrastructure, just pretty much extremely high potential in earning companies. The potential is massive, so they really go after startups, in particular tech and healthcare startups, which I have a huge problem with. But think of like Hims and Hers, the company, right? Hims, love Hims, big investor in them. We've got quite a few clients in those positions. However, those kind of businesses are being bought by private equity, okay? And they're never going, well, that's actually part of what private equity does. So where was I? Where am I going with this? Right. So I might, as I'm owning this private equity, the one in our example right here, $100 million, I might say, okay, I'm going to target healthcare companies. So I'm going to go after orthopedic practices. I'm going to go after pharmaceutical practices, and I'm going to try and find the owner and give them a many times multiple of what the company is actually worth. And sometimes I'll try to say, hey, you stay on, we're going to help you make this the most valuable company it can be, right? And to the owner, that sounds great. That sounds like, obviously, oh, well, I only want to be here for another 3 years. If I can sell this for a way higher multiple than I can right now, these guys will handle everything and I can just walk away, scot-free with way more money. That's a no-brainer. What ends up happening actually, and this is why there's actually a bubble, is that private equity, when they make these purchases of these companies, and we'll just use the healthcare as the example and we'll keep going with that, they're going to buy this practice and then they are going to cut all of the fat on this business, right? So this is going to be lazy employees. It's going to be trying to get cheaper medical equipment. It's going to be hiring better people for less, meaning you're going to try and take the best employee and have them do 3 or 4 jobs, wear multiple different hats, but not pay them for 3 or 4 different jobs. Okay, and they do this over and over and over again until the company is an absolute skeleton. So they take away all of the fat, all of the muscle. And my favorite visual for this is you have to have fat as a human being to exist, to live. You have to do it. There's no other way around it, right? Otherwise you die. That's what happens with these companies. Okay, so these PE firms are buying them up. There's trillions and trillions of dollars in the PE world. All right. And their whole job is to make a company quickly. It's usually 10 years or less that they will buy a company and try to flip it. So what does flipping it mean? It's either going to take them public or they're going to sell it again to somebody else or to another private equity firm. All right. And then those distributions that they get, they'll pay off their investors with a little bit of income, and then they pay themselves egregious, enormous bonuses. Okay. It's called carried interest. Think of like 2 and 20 is what I want you to think of. It's the most common one. 2% of assets under management every year. Okay. So 100 million, I'm getting 2 million every year, no matter what. Okay. And then I'm going to get 20% of any of the profits. So all those healthcare companies that we bought, if I sell any of them, I'm going to get 20% of those profits. Okay. That doesn't sound that bad for me, right? That sounds pretty good. The problem is for you as an investor and for everybody in America, in the world, anybody who knows anything about this, the real problem is that they're not sticking with the tech companies, the startups, like the fintech companies or the health tech companies. They're not staying with them. They're moving on. Okay, they're moving into a different industry, and it is extremely dangerous. Before I jump into what industry that is, I do just want to cover real quick. Private equity, you could make a lot of money as an investor. You really could, right? The whole purpose, say in our example, I am trying to make every investor happy and make them a lot of money. Okay, that's my goal. I don't really care about the business owner that I'm buying the practice from. I don't really care about the patients that the employees are seeing or that the employed doctors are seeing in these businesses. I don't care. My job is to cut fat and to turn it into efficiency. I'm all about margins in this scenario. How do I minimize and maximize the things that need to be minimized and the things that need to be maximized? The best visual that I've seen in TV and film has been The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Great movie. If you haven't seen that, please go check that out. In that movie, it's never explicitly stated, but I can tell you pretty unequivocally, the firm that comes in to take life off of basically they're doing their last print ever. They're cutting fat. They're making changes. I think they call it a transition period. Anytime there's a transition period or transition team that comes in, that's a private equity firm. So a private equity firm comes in and they're looking who they can fire and they're looking who they can unhire is what I call it. Unhiring is you're taking someone and you're giving them 6 or 7 different hats, right? We talked about that just now earlier. So they're unhiring people and they're firing a bunch of people. And that visual from The Secret Life, amazing. That's exactly what happens. And if you go watch that movie, you'll feel gross. You'll be like, God, these guys are dirtbags. They don't care about anything. They're just trying to make $1. They're just trying to make $1. That's how these PE firms work. So now, the meat and the potatoes of this. Why is this actually a bubble? They are coming for the blue collar jobs now. Okay, it's okay, right? If I'm Neil and I start a fintech company and someone comes in and they're like, we're going to give you $50 million for this and we'll pay you $250,000 every year to stay on as CEO or as head tech. That's a pretty good gig. Like, okay, good for him. He just made a whole bunch of money. He's been rewarded for his hard work. When they come for the blue collar jobs, let me tell you what's going to happen. Okay. It's plumbing. It's construction. It's handyman businesses. It's lock and key smiths. It's plumbers, electricians, mechanics, anything blue collar that you can think, waste management, anything blue collar you can think of, that's what they're coming for. That stripping of the fat is eating away at these businesses that they've built their whole model on sincerity, on character, on doing the right thing. It has nothing to do with profit. Okay, it has nothing to do with profit. And these companies are coming for these blue collar. And the reason it's working is because you have Mr. Electrician who's been doing this for 60 years. And he's like, man, 60 is probably extreme. We'll go 50. He's probably been doing it since he was 16. That counts. So he's 66. He's got this electrician company. Man, I've been doing it. My back hurts. I've got all these kids now. Like, they're going to give me 5 times my annual revenue, 10 times my annual revenue. I'm just going to pull the trigger. And what ends up happening is that they cut away so much fat and they ruin the business. They ruin the thing that made the business great in the first place. And that's why that's why there's not enough plumbers, or at least it's contributing to why there's not enough plumbers, electricians, mechanics, etc. is because private equity is coming in and they're taking these very infrastructure, very basic components of our economy, and they're just trying to flip them for a quick profit, right? Some of these companies, these blue collar companies, they've tried to take them public, right? And that's typically how a private equity firm gets out, right? So they'll buy it from a retiring electrician. They'll say 8 years, we'll give it 8 years. They work on the business. They make it extremely profitable. It's very efficient, and they try to take it public. Okay, these blue collar businesses aren't built on on efficiency. They just aren't. They're built on integrity and knowing your electrician personally, right? He goes to church with you. He lives down the road from you. You just have this trustworthiness, and private equity comes in and absolutely crashes that. Now, look, I got about 30 seconds, so I do want to say this. That is capitalism. And I love capitalism. I think capitalism is the best economic structure you can have. I think absolutely everybody could thrive if they wanted to. But even if they don't, they can still survive. Okay, that is what makes capitalism special than everybody. You can thrive, but even if you don't want to, you will survive and you have access to. This is, when I think of private equity, this is like capitalism at its absolute worst. It's absolute worst. It's the same thing with like when people talk about, again, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this stuff on YouTube, but like guns, for example. a good guy with a gun is better than a bad guy with a gun. That's obviously true. Obviously true. These are bad guys with guns, I feel. And it's like, oh my gosh, they're ruining people's lives, and well, they're also making people's lives, I suppose, with the people retiring who've done all that hard work. But the big issue is going to be those companies aren't meant to be stretched so thin. Okay, they're not meant to do that, and it's going to collapse. It's going to be like a piece of bubble gum that you just continually. It's like when you're blowing a bubble. Weird, convenient that we're talking about another bubble. But when you blow a bubble, what ends up happening is one part of the bubble gets stretched too thin and it bursts. That's what's going to happen with this blue collar infrastructure part of the economy. If these PE people, these PE firms are not held accountable, and they need to be stopped. Okay. So real quick, just to wrap up, they're not held to any accounting auditing standards. None. They do not have to tell the truth. They can fudge all they want. 2, they're in it to make a quick buck. They want to get in and they want to get out. And sometimes getting out is not good for everybody. Most of the time, it's not good for everybody. And number 3, they're now transitioning and have transitioned into the staple pillar parts of our economy, our infrastructure, our day-to-day lives. And because of that, the bubble will burst on them. And it could be bad for investors. It could be bad. It's especially bad for investors, but it could be bad for just regular hardworking folk. So, all right, guys, that is it for today. That's the real bubble I'm concerned about. I hope you learned something. As always, invest early, invest often. We'll see you next week.